Well, we're here with LeCalsey from Green Bay currently. Has been the soccer coach here at UW Green Bay many, many years ago. Lou, I always wondered, how did you get involved in soccer? Because this was back in the late 60s, 70s when soccer was formed.
Yep.
And you come out and coach championship team at Burnett, Green Bay.
I grew up in Southwest Philadelphia, where if you've seen the movie Rocky and the Italian Market, that was the neighborhood I grew up in. In fact, the row of homes that he had his place in was the same street.
Wow.
So as a kid, I was raised around all the Italians, but every Philadelphia in those days, and still is pretty much, enclaves of ethnic groups. And so, you know, we had Irish and German and Polish and Czechs and Ukrainians, Latinos, or you name it, they were there in some place. South Philadelphia was just one of the strongholds. North Philadelphia was strong with Scots and people from Wales and England and all. It was really interesting because with them, not unlike what Milwaukee has had with their own soccer clubs. So as a youngster, that's what I started in. That's how I got into soccer. And played there, and I was 13, I think, when my parents moved out from Philly because I was getting into trouble with some gang activity. And my dad said, "We're getting you out of here." So we moved to this, what was the suburbs, but in those days, the town we moved to had 3,000 people, and it was still mostly farm. It was the next county out from Philadelphia County. So I get there, and I'm ready to play soccer, and there was no soccer. The high school, they didn't have club teams, let alone high school leagues or anything. And we had a neighbor, the National Open Cup champions at one time in the 50s and early 60s was the Philadelphia Urick Truckers. There was a trucking company called Tony Urick's. Tony Urick owned it. And they were really good. And the goalkeeper for that club took me under his wing. And he was really good. And so I grew up under his tutelage. We'd work out 2 or 3 nights a week just by ourselves, and he was showing me things. And then he'd come to the games, because I still went back to my club team, even from the suburbs, because I didn't have any other choice, but it was great to be able to stay with the kids and the coaches that I knew. And he'd come to the games, and it was like a living videotape. He'd recite everything I did wrong and most of the things I did right. But he taught me so many technique things that I never even saw again. If I hadn't gotten it then, I would never have gotten it.
Really?
Because my college coaches, none of them had ever played goal. And that's such a specialized position in so many ways. I mean, sliding tackles, there's a technique to that. And so I'm trying to think the name of the Swarthmore College, which is still the #1 academic college in the United States. But they had I can't remember his last name, Bob's something. They were really good in those days. Now in those days, this is way back in the 50s, there wasn't Division I, II, and III. So Swarthmore would play Penn and Dartmouth and people like that, and that lasted all the way up to mid to late 60s. I think they started forming the divisions. But he saw me playing, and there was a Scotsman who was on the U.S. Olympic Committee and was a referee that was a friend of Bob's. And so he started following me. So I started building a little bit of people who were influential. And Franklin and Marshall, where I went, was founded in 1787. It's the 11th oldest college in the United States, and it was all male in those days. In 1958, they were national champions. And if you know soccer in the Philadelphia area, you knew about Franklin and Marshall, but they gave out scholarships for all their sports.
Back then already, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, play Maryland and Penn State and Duke and all those teams and beat them all.
Mm.
We didn't have 25 guys on scholarship. There were probably 12 or 13 of us, but they were all good. And our teams won a lot, and I learned a lot, and I had just a great career.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't always matter what you know, how much you know, but who you know and who can teach you. And apparently, this friend was a big influence on you.
He was, and
It's happened to a lot of us.
he was involved with enough people that he could make the right contacts.
Yeah.
Then, when I graduated from F&M, this isn't bragging, because I'll talk about why. In those days, we played the English system, 5-3 and 2 5 forwards.
The WM system.
The 3 halfbacks and 2 fullbacks, which meant that any team that had kind of modernized and was using some of the throwing more forwards into the thing, especially with overlaps, we had so many breakaways, and I always played off the line, a lot more than goalkeepers do today.
Yeah.
Because I was good with my feet, and I was really good at sliding tackles, and frankly taking the ball right off their feet and rolling.
It's important.
So I had, I still hold, after they won't get broken, all the saves and percentage saves and all those records at F&M. And I'm in their Hall of Fame. I'll send you a vitae afterward.
Yeah, okay.
And then that all came to an abrupt halt because of a thing called Vietnam. I graduated from college and got a draft notice because I was getting ready to play with the Philadelphia Atoms.
No kidding. Yeah, I remember them. One of the first teams in the NASL.
Yeah. I mean, I went down and worked out with them and worked in a couple of scrimmages, and the best part about that was I got shot at by Pele once. I didn't think he was the hardest shot I ever saw was George Best.
Yeah.
And that darn ball he hit was like a lead ball. It had funny spin on it. And you had to wrap it or you get... and the other thing I learned was how to tape my wrist because of some guys like that at that level. Yeah. But anyway, my family had served in all the wars since the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all Army, except my father, who was Navy. And being the rebel I always was, I said, I'm going to do something different. I went in the Marine Corps. Enlisted, and I was in 6 years.
Oh, and that was in the 60s.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, I got into Special Ops. The counterpart to the Navy SEALs is called Force Recon. And go online and look at it, it's really neat, because there were 185 of us that tried out and 2 of us made it. But soccer helped a great deal. I mean, I had great eye-hand coordination, I could run forever. I'd been in pressure situations in games, penalty kicks and things like that, and just worked great.
It's just a different battle.
And we were on a lot, I was on a lot of missions during the time, but 4-man teams, all deep reconnaissance, and we'd go in by parachute or rappel or helicopter or boats, or swim.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, those other 3 guys are like brothers, and it was just my finishing school, I call it.
Yeah.
Because I came out of there with experiences with guys from all over, all levels and walks. My team was a Puerto Rican from New York, Bronx, and 2 black guys from Alabama, and the 4 of us are still really, really close.
Yeah, that's an education. You can't sign up for it. These things have to happen.
It was just,
well.
I almost didn't get out of the games. I mean, I really loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But with a college degree, if I wanted to stay in, I would have to sign up for another 4 to 6 years. And they also wouldn't let us in those days because of the stress. They wouldn't let you stay in more than 2 years in Force Recon. So I would have to rotate out at the end. And I said, no, I'm not going to. And I also didn't agree with the way the Vietnamese War was being fought.
Yeah.
And I lost too many friends over there who were used as And we were really specialized and proud of it, and they put them in front of Army units as point.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that went. I got drafted too, but I already had served in the Netherlands, so I got out of it. Yeah, that was horrible. So how did you end up in Green Bay?
Okay. I went with Scott Paper,
Oh, okay.
and their world headquarters and their largest plant was in Philadelphia. Actually, Chester, where the Philadelphia Union plays. They built a new stadium there. That's right in the same neighborhood. And they had a program for college grads, military exes, who didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. It was a 2-year program, and you did shift work. You learned the paper industry all the way from the timberlands through the pulping process, the paper machines, converting, and I thought this was great because it was all of us were service people, so we had a lot of that brotherhood. All of us were on a pretty good track. They were really selective in hiring, so if you got in it, unless you really messed up or turned down promotions. Because if you turned down a promotion and wouldn't relocate, that killed you in those days.
Only one chance.
Yeah, especially early on. So I took every promotion, and Sue and I moved 17 times. 17 different hats, and we lived all over. They had plants all over, Northwest, South, Midwest, Northeast, you name it, we were there or lived there. And just fantastic to be able to be a kid from South Philly and go in the Marines, right? And then go all over the United States, and you live there. You would be assigned there for about 1.5 years. And it got to the point where if 18 months came by and you hadn't had a call, you'd say, what did I mess up with? But so many places we went and had a chance to live were so much better than Philadelphia.
Yeah.
When we had a chance to retire, we came back here. We did not go back to Pennsylvania. It's, compared to the quality of life here, it's not even comparable.
Well, we were glad you made that move to Green Bay because soccer was very new in this area. Milwaukee, as we mentioned before, we had a team in Oshkosh, but it was pretty foreign, and only foreigners played it.
Yeah. The Fox Valley Bombers.
Fox Valley Bombers, yeah, they started up in the late 60s.
Right.
And they had a club in Oshkosh in the mid-50s, but they had a hard time getting new people because they were in their own ethnic group, and as soon as somebody new came in from Hungary or Germany, hey, you play soccer? Join us. But they didn't share it as much as the Fox Valley Bombers started to do because they opened up youth programs.
Yes, they did.
Clinics and everything.
Yeah.
And you started out in Marinette. Were you the first coach there? Was there a program?
Yeah.
And how did that start? As far as I can see, that was the first organized school program in Wisconsin.
Yes, it was.
All the 2-year campuses got involved.
Right. Scott Paper made it pretty important for you to get involved in your communities.
Ah.
And so the house that we bought it backed right up to the Marinette campus. And like it was August, September, nothing going on because I could see there was nothing happening. That's soccer season. Come on. So I went over to the fellow who was the dean. Bill Schmidtke was his name. And I said, okay, I'm with Scott. I live right behind you. I play a lot of soccer. And Scott Paper is willing to put in a field and goals and do the whole thing if you let me coach. And so we made a deal. And we started in the first year. St. Norbert had a club team, and some of the Stevens Point and places like that had club teams. So we ended up putting a season together in the first year. I think we played 8 games. And we only lost once. And that was when Alvin played for St. Norbert. And
must have been in the sophomore year.
So that's how I first got to meet him. Because it got pretty heated at one point in the game when I said, if you're going to keep playing, I'm going to come in and play goal. And that's going to be interesting. And, you know, in Italian, he basically yelled back, "Come on and do it." And I didn't. That's not right for a coach to go in and take it from the kids. But it really caught on. In a small town like Marinette, at that time, I think they may have had, in Marinette, Menominee, maybe 8 or 10,000.
Yeah.
Pretty good football. So I knew that there were kids there that played defensive backs or halfbacks who could probably adjust to soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So I recruited high schools and stuff, and we ended up with a really good turnout the second season. And by that time, I had started scheduling up and was playing other community colleges and stuff, not just in this area, but outside of this area. We really went on a tear. Those kids really learned, and they were in great condition. And I don't think we went through the season undefeated, but close. We may have lost once. But the head of the U.S. Soccer Coaches Association was another coach that I had played against his teams, the guy Don Yonker, who was the coach at Drexel University.
Mm-hmm.
And he put the word out. You guys ought to take a look at this team up there, you guys in the upper Midwest. And he said, why don't you put in and see if you can get to the national tournament for junior colleges? And I thought, what's to lose? Then I found out after getting accepted that it was in Nassau, Long Island. And we had to raise about $30,000 to go there. That town put that money in less than 24 hours.
Wow, very nice.
Isn't that neat?
That is. That's community support.
And then Channel 11 got in on it, and they did an hour special called The Littlest Giant. And they sent a crew east with us to the national tournament in Nassau, Long Island. And Billy Scheller, who was my center half, made All-American. First team. And I'm sitting there thinking, how does this happen? This is amazing. Then the next step that happened, the season ended, everybody was, we had the TV thing, and that was really neat because a lot of people in Northeast Wisconsin were seeing this special from Channel 11, and it brought a lot of interest in the sports writers. What was Lee's last name? The sports editor then from the Press Gazette. I'll remember it in a little bit. He did some write-ups, and it was kind of waning. You know, the season was over. I was going on with my job, but at the same time, I was getting bored because what I was doing was working in quality at the time, and it was a very stable mill. There wasn't a lot of problem there. Mm-hmm. Great workforce. So I let the people know in Scott that I was thinking of going back and getting my master's degree. And UW Oshkosh was just getting ready to start their MBA program. A fellow named Dr. Gene Drzymski. And he'd been around soccer wherever he went to school. And called me and said, you know, we'd love to have you come down. We heard about it. If you want to go here, we'll work something out. At the same time, Ed Widener, who was the new chancellor at UW Green Bay, was trying to figure out what should be the sports at UWGB. Now, people don't know this, but Vince Lombardi retired in '68. He spent a year here as their kind of super general manager and president, and before he went to Washington in '69. He was the de facto athletic director. He was Ed Widener's advisor. Vince grew up in Brooklyn, hotbed of soccer, and his comment was, do not go the football route. You won't be able to afford it in the first place. Secondly, you're going to be competing with St. Norbert. UWM had a good program at the time in football. Even the state schools, Oshkosh was pretty good. And he said, then you're going to be going against the Badgers, and then last of all, you're going to be going against the Packers, and we're not going to have that. So for all those reasons, you guys should never go the football route. And he said, the other thing is, I'm familiar enough with the American sports scene, and he said, if you want to have success on a national level, you have a chance in soccer to do that. You won't be able to do it in basketball, at least not in my lifetime, and any of the other sports you have. Soccer you could, because it wasn't at the level it is today in colleges. So, with that, Ed says, where in the devil, because not unlike what you said, he was aware that there wasn't any soccer north of Milwaukee worth of being. And Vince leaned forward and said, you have a coach 45 minutes north of here who just came back from taking his team to the Nationals. It's a really neat story. That was his second year and he takes him to the national tournament. So why did you call him?
Oh.
And Ed, by that time, had picked up that I'd be interested in, I wanted to get my a leave of absence and do a master's. So I had a call one day, I was at work, and it's Ed Winder. He says, how about coming down for lunch at the Stratosphere Club, which in those days was a pretty nice place. And I'll have a guest there I want you to meet, and we'll talk about the soccer, because we need a coach, and we're interested in you. And he, as I got to know Ed, one of the most frank people I ever knew in my life, he said, plus, we don't know where else to find a coach, so if it doesn't work with you, we have a problem. Would you be interested? I said, well, I'll be interested in lunch, let's see where we go. It was really a funny thing. I walked in, and there's Vince Lombardi sitting there with Ed Winder. Now, I was 29 and had been through combat and been through a lot of stuff, and I wasn't usually awed. I was awed. I could not believe I was sitting next to Vince Lombardi. And they started asking general questions about my family and the background, what South Philadelphia was like. And Vince knew a lot about it. Up in New York, he lived in the Italian section of Brooklyn. So we started having a pretty neat rapport. And he said, you went to Franklin Marshall College, right? I said, yes. I said, you did your homework. He says, well, we'll find out if you did yours in a minute. I thought, uh-oh. And he said, do you know Woody Sponaugle? I said, he was the athletic director when I was at Franklin Marshall. He says, you tell that son of a bitch. He was the toughest guy I ever played against. Here it turned out that the Fordham, the team that Vince played on, the 7 blocks of granite, famous ones, they played F&M in the Polo Grounds in New York. And F&M lost in the last couple of minutes, 14-7 to Vince Lombardi's team. And Lombardi played opposite Sponaugle.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there thinking, this is really pretty neat. If I don't get the job, it's been one great experience.
Yeah.
And Ed called me that night and he said, Vince likes you, he thinks you can do it. If you want the job, this is the best part. We'll offer you $20,000 a year. I was making 10. Ed's got paper. And he says, we'll throw in your masters, books, the whole deal. And it's a 2-year contract. I thought, my gosh, I've scored. This is great. Now, when I came down here, it was December of '68 that I accepted the job. And I walk into Ed's office, and I said, I forgot to ask a couple of things like, what's our stadium? What's my recruiting budget? Do we even have soccer? Or do we have anything?
Yeah.
He said, no. He says, I didn't tell you all that because you might have said that with a negative. So I said, I've got to find a field. I've got to find players. I don't have money for recruiting. I'm not going to find referees up here. We're going to have to pay them out of Chicago and Milwaukee. What else did you need? He said, no, you just go out and he said, Vince will help you raise the money. And I went out on a marathon for almost 2 months. I spoke to Lions Club, Little Sisters of the Poor, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Rotary. I can't tell you how many. It was the greatest experience because it assimilated me into Green Bay, and the excitement that I felt about bringing soccer to the area showed. And guys would walk up, here's $1,000, and Bart Starr was fantastic. The Packers let us use their head trainer, Don Gentili. Mm-hmm. Dr. Nellen was the orthopedic guy, Dr. Myers was the eye doc. I mean, he threw all those resources behind us. I found Joanna Stadium.
Remember that? Yeah.
And a field just fit in there. And that allowed us to play under the lights, and it was, I think it seated 3,000. Well, we could get a pretty good crowd in there, even standing around the field, and you're about 4,000.
It was 4 deep standing.
Yeah.
I mean, when you played St. Louis there.
It was just a fantastic place to play in a way. A lot of history. And we, you know, they are drawing crowds like that even today here. And the newspapers were all over us. Some of these things here, but
yeah, except for the Post Crescent. We were looking forward to seeing pictures of soccer, and never saw it in the Post Crescent.
Well, it never quite. I couldn't crack those guys.
Yeah.
And I was having too good a time up here to think of spending all the time down there. I did go down there to recruit a lot. You know, I got a Horst Demke and
Eric. Yeah.
Still in contact with all those guys.
Carini.
Both Carini boys.
Yeah.
Freddie Bastine.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
We had a couple boys from New Jersey too.
Well, remember I said I took my team to the National Junior College Playoff. The National Junior College champions. And the runner-up, the National Junior College champions was from Trenton.
Yeah, well, Trent, that's where the boys came from.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a coincidence there. I recruited them. And then the goalkeeper I got from Catonsville, Maryland. So here I come in with basically my back line made up of a lot of Milwaukee guys, so we're still them, they were good players.
Yeah.
Captain of the 72 Olympic team, right? Eric was a good player.
Yes.
He was halfback. My halfback line was anchored with the first All-American in UWGB sports history, Kenny Hess. But his wingmate, Pete Stratton, was every bit as good as him, and just wasn't as much of a scorer.
Was Desi on that team too?
Desi was my first athlete without a scholarship in GB history.
Oh.
I got him out of Allegheny Community College in Pittsburgh. But then I recruited through people I knew in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, from the club teams. And we ended up with kids from 17 different nations coming in here. And so the team was from all over. And the biggest issue I had in the first year was blending them into a team. Not only did they not all speak the same language, but they were culturally different, and frankly put them through the same thing that you put Force Recon Marines through physically. And welded that team together. And we didn't have much attrition. There was a kid from Pennsylvania that left. One of the Carini boys dropped out. Steve Carini. And the nucleus held together. And my mantra to them is, if we come off the field at halftime, tied or within a goal, I'm going to really open it up in the second half with you guys and let you run and go. And we'll do kind of a little bit of the English long ball and we'll see what happens. We'll win the games. Because the other kids, I guarantee you, aren't going to be in the condition you're in. Boy, did that show up. Our first game, we went out to, second game, we went out to Colorado College for the first game. Instead, we flew to all our away games, East Coast and Far West, with a donated airline from Bachelor Airlines.
The ideal situation for you.
Stewards and meals and everything was donated by a great businessman. We beat Colorado College, who was nationally ranked, 3-0 in the first game. And then the second day we played Air Force, who was 7th in the United States, and we lost on a penalty kick in the last minute, which I accused Aiken of rigging. But I liked him well enough that I think he was a good successor. Then we went, Gene Kenny, who was the head coach of the national champions, Michigan State. I had called him and said, Gene, give me a break, come on. He invited us to their invitational tournament, and he said, just don't embarrass me with getting run off the field. I said, my kids, you will not run off the field. You may outscore us, but I'll bet you they're not going to run us off. We had a 3-3 double overtime tie with the national champions.
Whoa.
And he said, where'd you get these guys? And I said, France, Thailand, Milwaukee, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Trent. I mean, it was really neat.
It was fun to come watch them. We took off Saturday afternoons and we came out and took the kids, the neighborhood kids.
We played a good brand of soccer. It
Yeah.
was offensive, heavy emphasis, because I didn't think you could sell 1-0 and 0-0 games up here. This is a title town, they're used to football, they're used to scoring. I honestly think that hurt American soccer for a lot of years until people became a little more sophisticated and understood the game.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's too many low-scoring games. That incidentally all changed when Italy came in, the Catenaccio, the emphasis on defense,
Yeah.
and scoring went
That
down.
was all money, if you didn't have the money to buy the better players, they had the
Yeah,
defense.
they were playing 5 guys back almost all the time, no matter what.
Yeah. And back then you got only 2 points from the win, so
It-
1 point was not bad.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But then I had guys like Horst and all who could overlap, and I would call signals. You probably, I don't know whether you watched or aware of it, but we had an awful lot of restart plays, and I would call it by numbers, and we would change offenses and defense on the fly. We had a number system for that. So, and with Gene Kenny and Michigan State, I had to change a lot because I could see some of their tendencies after about 10 minutes, and all of a sudden they're facing a different defense, and all of a sudden our offense was different. So it was really a neat experience. And one of the reasons we came back here was because I made so many friends in Green Bay who were still here, they were still here. Marinette, I ran a Scott plant in O'Connell Falls. I ran Scott Food Service out of Oshkosh. And we had a plant in Milwaukee. So I had been up and down the east side of the state, and every time Sue and I would relocate, we made a practice of formally stopping at the end of the driveway of the house we were leaving and say, how does this compare? Where do you like it best? She always said Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And
We're glad she did.
well, I am too, because I wanted her to make a decision now.
Mhm.
And she was like me. Keep Pennsylvania in the rearview mirror, it's not the same. I just think it was a life experience advantage that we had that allowed us to make good decisions on relocations. We learned a lot from them. And living all over and having the ability to compare to 5 exposures in Wisconsin, and it's ironic. And I was lucky that Scott had 4 plants in the state.
Yeah, don't see that very often.
No, there aren't many companies. That was the only paper. They were the largest paper company in the world when I was there.
Mhm.
34th largest in the world, in the Fortune 100.
You lit the fire on a lot of people, they got involved. People that had never played soccer, never seen soccer, UWGB soccer got involved. And it was so easy to get an expanded program in Green Bay. Probably one of the earlier programs in the whole state, at least the northern part of the state.
Yeah. And we fostered things like Jerry Yeagley came up and spent a week with us.
Yeah.
And that helped seed what they did. Denmark Kramer came over, do you remember when he came?
Oh, yes, yeah.
He was the World FIFA coach. And he came and spent 2 weeks with us, all through Gene Edwards,
Mhm.
because I didn't have any contacts with that man, obviously. And I just stood back and learned. There was a master coach.
Yeah, he was the coach that did soccer camps all over
All over the world.
Yeah, I ran the one for Wisconsin back in '74, I believe. And Denmark was the coach. And I picked him up every morning from his hotel.
Yes,
There.
yes.
And he just passed away last year.
Did he?
91 and 92 years old.
Rail thin, but just
The rubber ball.
yes.
Yeah.
But he did drills that I'd never seen before. He introduced the kids to drills. And some of
And
them,
all the warm-ups were all soccer related, with a soccer ball.
yeah,
You stretch, you have a soccer ball.
yeah.
Yeah.
But some of them were throwing
Mhm.
to get used to spacing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The kids that played basketball, they knew how to get an open spot.
Yeah,
with this type of handball, yeah, worked out great.
Aldo was invaluable. And to this day, he's my big brother that I never had.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough about him. He and Janet were right there all the way through. He was my alter ego. He was better technician and coaching than I was. I was the organizer and the public relations guy and doing the strategic moves with the news media and things like that. Aldo did an awful lot of work with the kids on the field and really helped them.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that was a unique combination
Mm-hmm.
of personalities and skill set. I'll tell you a little story about how Green Bay got their school colors. Red, white, and green, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's August. We opened up right after Labor Day in September, and we didn't have uniforms ordered yet. And every time I asked Ed Wider, the chancellor, what are the school colors? I've got to order these things. Well, we haven't decided yet. We don't want it to be just like Madison. So finally, one afternoon, I grabbed Aldo and said, we've got to know now, because we were buying our uniforms out of a soccer specialty store in Westchester, Pennsylvania, as I knew. And they also gave us a great price. So I went into Ed, barged in to his office. I said, I've got to know. They're telling me if I don't place the order by 5 o'clock Eastern time, we're not going to have uniforms to start the season, which means I'm going to have to go and buy some shorts and some tops. It's going to look really Bush League. So he says, well, you two pick them. And Aldo looked at me and he says, I know what colors it should be. Red, white, and green. The Italian national colors. That's how UW.
Vince must have liked that too.
Oh, he did. He thought that was great.
It's funny you mentioned the Lombardi influence. When we started soccer in Nina, we were looking for a sponsor. We went to Fuzzy Thurston and Max
Yeah,
McGee,
sure.
and they sponsored the team. We were called the Left Guards.
Were you really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
and
neat.
we were looking for names to put on our stationery that looked more important than Joseph Van Wah. So we had both Fuzzy and was one the wide receiver, Max McGee.
Max McGee.
They both were listed as trustees on our stationery.
That's a neat story too.
Yes, and it was so approachable back then too. Today, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, it was through the Bombers and all that I met you and Kelderman, and there were a whole bunch of guys that I had a chance to meet that way. And then down in Milwaukee, Al Nikolic at the...
Yeah, Al's been a big promoter for
And
something.
when they had their banquet, I spoke and Phil Wisdom spoke.
Oh, what happened to him? Is he still around?
I don't think he's alive.
Yeah.
But when the North American Soccer League fizzled out, he, I think, went back to England.
But he hung on when there were only 5 teams left. He was still out there promoting it. Him and another Englishman. Yeah, those were the growing years. And when I was coaching then and coaching now, I hear people complain and say, we have a soccer tournament every weekend. Yeah, and so it's been great.
Well, after I left here, because my contract was up, I'd gotten soccer started. I'll tell you confidentially, the only problem I had with being a full-time coach was the games were when I was really, you're competing. The rest of the time, practice is okay, but it's not as exciting as a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't fast enough for me overall. The business world was unbeatable.
Yeah.
I was competing every day. And so I went back and had a fantastic career. Ended up, there were 5 of us that ran Scott, again, the largest tissue company in the world.
Yeah.
When Al Dunlap came in, he was the guy that came into Scott to essentially, it was to get shareholder value up, stock prices up. But he shared with us that he was going to basically get the company sold. You'll love this. He announces it to the 5 of us. We're gonna sell the company. That's confidential, you can't, but you're gonna have all be in it, because we have Unilever, P&G, KC. There was another Canadian company who was interested, but they never fully got involved with the negotiations. When he told everybody that they were gonna sell, I sat up and said, I'm going back to Wisconsin. This is neat. All the other people were really deeply rooted in the Northeast. And they were all like, oh, come on. Well, so I was just happy as you could. I thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
Because we were going back to Wisconsin. And when the company was sold, I transitioned for 7 months with KC and got a call, would I be interested in coming out to run a small company in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And they moved us here, and I took that over and ran it for 17 years. And when I came, it had like 60 employees, and they were not in good shape. When I retired 17 years later, we were the largest private. We were traded publicly. We were a public company, but the largest private contract manufacturing company for wet wipes in North America. And we had about 400 employees at peak time, 600. So that was a good run too.
That's quite a career. I'm just anxious to see what would have happened if you would have stayed in soccer.
I've often thought about that.
Yeah.
I do believe that with the proper support, we'd have ended up with a program to rival Indiana's. I really do. Because all the
You had a lot of things going there that could.
well, and the recruiting is the key, as you know. And we had East Coast going for us. We were pulling kids from St. Louis already, Milwaukee. I remember Frank Sarzinski. I went down and saw him. Kids from there wanted to come up to play here, and now the guys that came in didn't have the same relationship base that I had here. They brought in Tom Griffith from Dartmouth.
Yes, number town.
And he was there here, what, 3 years?
Not very long.
No, 2 or 3.
He had, I remember his claim to fame was Kyle Roach Jr. played for him at Dartmouth.
Okay.
He was coaching there, yeah.
I remember he came in from Dartmouth. And then Hank.
Hank Eichen, yeah. And then Aldo, he was there for the longest time, and since then they've had
Well,
different.
I
Chris
think-
Kelderman coached there for a year.
I know Chris, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was disappointed when he left.
Mm-hmm.
Aldo, I think, saved the program, because by the time he got asked to step in, they were terrible. They weren't even considered an upper Midwest contender. They were really bad. They lost all the roots we had with all those recruiting places. Just think, he came into a broken program, and he's the one that got him into D1 and into the national playoffs.
Yeah.
I think he did a great job. And his support, frankly, wasn't as good as what I had. When Lombardi was gone, the Varsity Club, which was formed when I was here with Bart Starr and all those guys, that was gone. He didn't have the funding we had back in '69 and '70.
Was Dean Austin the athletic director back then? Yeah, from high school, UWS guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one more question for you. You coached at Marionette, but all of a sudden, Blattville, not Blattville, but Menasha, Manitowoc, they were all coming into a conference.
Yeah.
I mean, were there more people like you that started it, or?
There had to be.
I know Kenny Anderson at Menasha, UW Fox.
I remember him very well.
He was very instrumental in getting going at UW Fox.
Yes. Yeah, because when we had those 2-year campuses, we played them a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That was a nice conference, and we built from there because they played in the fall. And Harry Kellerman and I went to see all these coaches and got them convinced that their kids should play the spring in the Wisconsin Soccer Association League.
See, that's a part of the story that's gotta get linked into the building with ours, this one here. Cause I put on camps in all those places, but that doesn't build a base. It's just an introduction, it's contact and awareness. And so it's guys like you and Kellerman and people like that built the thing.
It's a passion.
Yeah.
I want to see it succeed, yes.
And it wasn't all that many years that Milwaukee couldn't say we're the only place in the state that really plays soccer.
Mhm.
I think Wisconsin has gotten to the point where they're pretty good, even on a national basis. The kids coming out of here can play at the top levels, colleges.
Yeah, you're right. You don't have to live in Milwaukee or Madison.
Right.
Wausau, Stevens Point, Racine, a lot of good things. Well, Kathy, thanks very much for producing this again for us, and
Thank you.
See you next time.
Yeah.